let's get started right away. I'm going to show you like the bit of news that's been like hitting the I guess you could say the chopping block, and it's related to this gentleman. His name is Elon
Oh
Musk.
boy. King.
We know that. I mean, he's the richest man on Earth, I think, so far, or one of the richest men on the planet. Owner of various different companies. I think people who follow this channel are probably aware that he is widely known for Tesla, SpaceX, also owns Twitter, or like formerly known as Twitter X, and a whole set of other companies that I'm not going to dive into. But he, in summary, so it serves as a little bit of a context to what I'm about to get into. He invested, I'm going to call it investing. It's a like, give it the capitalistic term, but he donated around $200 million to the Trump campaign back in this last couple of months in 2024 election cycle, and had a huge return on investment because he earned the stock price went up. And the reason I say had a huge return on investment is because he was afforded the privilege of leading a department that has not been approved by Congress. Normally, the creation of departments in the federal government are approved by Congress, with some exceptions, of course, like with the if it's something that needs to be propped up right away, like FEMA, for example, it can be just authorized by the executive as an extension of the executive branch. I know I'm going very technical here, but basically, Doge doesn't have authorization from Congress, but it is an extension of the executive branch. So this is was created by the second Trump administration, and it stands for Department of Government Efficiency, aka Doge. Um, I don't know how familiar you are, Scott, but with this,
Look,
but Elon Musk
let's
used to donate, like not donate, used to invest in Doge, the cryptocurrency, and that's why it's called Doge. I feel
yes.
like
So
I don't
I
know.
I know the crypto coin well. I learned the hard way that I'm probably not so good at crypto investing. I bought Doge at
Me
the
neither.
absolute peak in 2021, right
Yeah.
before Elon Musk went on SNL. Uh, it absolutely tanked, lost 80% of its value. And then I sold it about a year later. It was fun to be on the roller coaster, but ultimately I ended up a lot poorer. And I think that's going to be a bit of a theme with Elon Musk
Oh
in
yeah.
the federal government here. He's going to run around, he's going to break a lot of stuff. It's going to be a wild ride, but I think we're all going to end up a little bit worse because of it.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, this is just like he's known for this. He's just another quintessential like billionaire with a chip on his shoulder and a lot to prove or a lot to compensate for, and this is one of those things. What makes him more dangerous, though, is that he is ideologically driven, and the reason why I'm telling you that and switching news is because um, even as soon as today, we've seen a lot of sweeping like powers being given to this department. As our viewers know, the power of the purse means that uh, you know whatever branch of government has control over the money in the government. When you say power of the purse, you mean that section of government has power over how money is spent, and it is not the executive branch, which is where Doge falls into,
They
right?
sure think it's the executive branch.
For sure that they sure think that they're engaging in the destruction of multiple departments across the federal government. One of them is the IRS, as you see here. And this is by the Guardian, UK based newspaper, and they're saying IRS reportedly preparing to give Musk Doge agency access to taxpayer data. And this was today. This was just a couple of hours ago, and it's they're getting into the individual departments in Washington, D.C., and it's about a team of 20 people. Most of them are like 20-year-olds, 18 to 20
20
year
year
olds. Yeah,
olds.
which is like insane in and on itself. Um, and they're getting into these departments under the guides of, you know, with the permission of the executive. But then again, the executive does not have the authority to do this. So even if Trump wanted to do this, he doesn't have the authority to do so. It needs to go through Congress. So and specifically, it needs to go through the House of Representatives, which has the power of the purse, in order for you to change the IRS. But
And there was a
Constitution
frightening
be
story
damned.
here. Yeah, there was a frightening story here with uh, Musk's cronies going to the IRS and asking for access to this private data, and the employees saying no. So they turn around and just start firing the employees. This is access. This is top level. This is top level, top secret data,
Where is
not
this
by
happening again?
the I'm pretty sure this was at the IRS, and that's not an official classification, mind you, but this is secret data that most employees can't even access, and they go ahead and fire the longtime civil servant. I think everybody had some hope. Maybe we could cut some government waste, but I don't know that cutting entire departments and making us all less safe and making our country less secure is what we had in mind there.
No, for sure, for sure. And then if we were saying like, okay, that's kind of like the guys, right? The excuse is we are, and they use very like peculiar language around this. We're I think you already mentioned it, which is like cutting waste. We're cutting waste. And everybody that would hear that, like any regular Joe that hears that, would agree with that, would agree with like, yes, do you want to cut waste in government? Yes, of course, I like to
Of
cut waste.
course.
Do you
Oh,
like to
yeah.
leave garbage inside your house? No, it stinks and it rots and then like you want to throw it away, right? So it like it plays with our minds in the same way it played during like the Bush era when they were when Republicans were talking about like wasteful spending. They were talking about it and using like a the analogy of your household, like, oh, in your household you wouldn't let your expenses go beyond your income, and use that as an analogy for government when
Yeah.
government is much more complex than the finances of a household. But those types of analogies and those types of that type of language is very effective
Yeah.
when you're trying to justify something as grotesque as the destruction of a department.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, this starts from a lot of this stuff starts from a grain of truth, right?
Mm.
There's the government is not the most efficient thing, not
Yeah.
always the best at delivering services. And we can all agree on that, right? This is not something that is far-flung, and I'm sure there was waste in this department or that one. But to wipe entire departments off the map really stands to make us less safe. We had plane crashes at the beginning of Trump's administration. They're cutting FAA transportation, like plane transportation security workers. USAID was built to exert American soft power to make sure that we weren't the only power in the world wasn't coming from our military might or our tariffs. And, we've talked a lot about tariffs.
Mm.
Now they're wiping the entire department away. So, it just ultimately serves in the long term to make us weaker while they're trying to bolster themselves with powers that they legally don't have because they're trying to take the power away from Congress. The
Yeah.
Republican Congress is just flopping belly up.
No, for sure, for sure. And it's like, and it serves to feed the same distrust that the populace in general had towards government, right? They had they understood as government as being inefficient, as not serving my interests, and now it's going to become more of a reality with the destruction of these departments. Um, it's like it reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my siblings who's a Trump supporter, unfortunately. But the way
Look,
I was,
we that's
yeah, go
fine.
ahead, go
It's
ahead.
like Trump supporters. And that's the thing. We're not all going to agree, right? And
No.
like whether we're talking about a specific person, who you voted for doesn't really matter. But
Mm.
this like very real, tangible destruction of our strength at the hands of an unelected, non-born American citizen is, destructive to all of us, regardless of who you voted for.
Yeah, because if Trump had instructed Congress to eliminate certain departments, yes, I would vehemently disagree with his choice, but that would have been a legitimate move from an
Right.
elected president and an elected chamber of
And
Congress.
that's the
Uh,
crazy thing. They probably would have done it too. Like if they
yeah.
wanted to defund USAID, the Republican Congress probably would have done it. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that they could do in the legal, enduring way that they're
Yeah.
choosing to do through executive authority, which means a subsequent president who disagreed can just undo all of it, just continuing the back and forth swing in American
Yeah,
politics, and
and
then
that's
nobody's
and I'm
happy.
glad you mentioned that because it ties in neatly with the long-term consequences of this, right? There's a lot of things in American politics that are norms based, that
Yeah.
are tradition, and it's for a very good reason. Why do we still have the filibuster in the Senate? Because there it's not because the other party can't just go into power and remove it, right? Why don't Republicans just remove the filibuster right now? Because
I'm
they know
surprised,
that
to
is
be
it's a
honest.
tool. Well, because it's a tool, right? It's a tool
Yeah.
for them to use against the other party
Right.
in the instance that they become the minority. The
Yes.
same, like it's a check on the other party. If I remove it, then they will keep it removed, and they will not have that. We won't have that tool at our disposal, right? Power begets power. If you have access, sudden access to more power, you're not going to give it up. I don't think any president has given up their executive power, and the executive branch has only expanded in power. Um, and just to give the viewers the analogy I had in my conversation with my siblings, which is very relevant to what we're talking about now with Elon Musk, is like when you have a department that's very inefficient, are you better off reforming it or are you better off destroying it? And he didn't understand the question. He was like, I don't know, we need to destroy it from the ground, the from the ground up or whatnot. And I told him, okay, he's an avid basketball player. He's a college basketball player. And I told him, okay,
Well,
if you go into a game and you have let's say you have one of the basketballs that you were going to use is doesn't have any more air, do you throw away the basketball or do you fill it up with air? He said, I fill it up with air. Then that's that's what we would do. Like you would amend the error, the thing that's wrong with it, you would fix. If there's a hole in it, you patch it. If there's a, I don't know, a light fixture missing in the basketball court, you fix it. We look to improve instead of just utterly destroy. You know. Um, moving on, right? Let me show you the other bits of news that you alluded to.
yeah.
This one was the one on the IRS. Um, and I think you've already talked about how they've been going from department to department, agency to agency. Like Elon Musk and his team, his staff from Doge, and they have been getting into the servers of these individual agencies and collecting as much data as possible. Not only that, they're also like outright canceling contracts, which
Yeah.
is also illegal. You can't do, or at least you're not supposed to do.
Yep.
Um, and they've been doing it here. They've also been doing it in other agencies, in the Social Security as well. They now have access. This was at 11 a.m. today. It's like 8:30 p.m. over here. So 11 a.m. today. Um, access to millions of Social Security numbers. There's also talks between Elon Musk and the Department of Defense to make cuts within the Department of Defense. And there's also that one of the most notable ones, which was the complete obliteration of the Department of Education. Um, and and the overarching thing that I think we're trying to get our across the viewers is this is not normal.
Right.
This is not at all like remotely normal. This is an unelected billionaire wielding the power of all three, like practically all branches of government.
Yeah.
Like,
And it makes you wonder, like, Luis, why do you think a billionaire would take such an interest in dismantling so many federal agencies?
well, there is the profit motive. Follow the money, right?
Bingo.
Especially in the case of Elon specifically, most of his businesses receive a enormous number of grants. And I mean, from research grants like SpaceX does, through grants that are given due to Tesla due to its emission standards. Um, don't get me wrong, like Tesla is a great company, right? Like in terms of like um, building electric vehicles that are very efficient and clean and whatnot, right? Um, but it's the principle, right? It's a democratic principle of do we or do we not all live by the same rules, by the same laws, by the same set of standards, right? If the answer, and the answer should be yes, right? I'm not even going to
Should
say
be.
if the answer is yes, the answer should be yes. And what we're seeing with Elon Musk in the involvement in the federal government is yes, if you have the money. That's the example we're seeing, you know?
I feel like we see this constantly with Donald Trump, uh, how he breaks federal laws, how he subverts norms. And let's not forget, he is also a billionaire himself. So,
Mm,
you know, uh, encouraging his supporters to mount an insurrection on the Capitol,
yeah.
then walking away without facing any federal charges because the justices that he nominated to the Supreme Court
Mm,
pushed the trial back to after the election. Look, these folks are just chasing profit. And, we were talking with Elon of how a lot of this might actually just trickle back to what they want to do with tax cuts.
yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh my God, I'd love to. So I'm so happy you asked.
Yeah.
Um, let's start with the 2017 tax cut. This was the Trump tax cut. Just reading here, the households with incomes in the top 1% receive an average tax cut of more than $60,000 compared to an average tax cut of less than $500 for everybody else. So this tax cut passed in 2017 ballooned the federal budget and was a massive giveaway to corporations and billionaires. I think with all the billionaires you're seeing in Trump's government, you're seeing that they might have noticed that and they might have taken an interest. The
Mm,
tax cut they're looking at now, I'm seeing an estimate total between $5 and $11 trillion. And where are we going to find $5 to $11 trillion to give to these billionaires and corporations? Well, one easy way might be to start eliminating services that the 99% that the majority of Americans use, like flight safety, like food safety, like safety to protect your bank from ripping you off, like things that exert American soft power like USAID, the Department of Education, which helps ensure that education is somewhat equal as much as possible throughout the United States. Just absolutely gutting the federal government to make room for giving themselves a massive payday at the expense of most voters.
yeah. That's coming up. A thing that's coming even sooner is the potential for a government shutdown because there needs to be the approval of a new budget. coming up. I think that's either was that on March 4th or March 14th? I think it was March
Yeah,
14th.
it's
And
close, and it's just we do this every couple months, and
yeah, yeah, no, it's ridiculous. But here is where I want to pivot to, like, from oh my God, look at all this terrible news happening in the country to shit, okay, this is what we can do to try and fight back.
yeah.
If you are, and I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever, Bob Marley party, I don't know. Uh, I don't know why Bob Marley's just popped in my head. But if you are interested in having a country that you feel is fair for you, like if you want a baseline set of rules, if you still want a democratic system, you ought to call your representative and your senator and tell them, okay, I don't like an unelected billionaire running government. And the reason I say that is because we have this coming fight happening, the fight over, oh, there's also the debt ceiling. Holy Jesus.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are like three things: the debt ceiling, the government shutdown, and also the
the
renewal
tax
of the
bill.
tax cuts. But the one that's coming
Yeah.
the soonest is the government shutdown, or the averting the government shutdown. And
And to
right
be clear,
now,
that's I'm pretty sure that's from the debt ceiling, right? It's like they need to renew the budget, which expires in March. And then they're also going to hit the debt ceiling. And the
yes.
reason the government would shut down is if they do not renew the budget, or I believe if the government hits the debt ceiling,
So
which
both things
they,
are
yeah,
true. Both things are
yes.
true. It's like we have a like a almost like a triple whammy coming in, um, and um, and they're trying to, like, right now we finally seen the Democrats wake up from their their eternal slumber, and come to the realization of they're, I mean, they're finally responding to thousands of calls coming into their from their districts, um, in response to this like overt like small, like slow moving coup that's happening in the United States, and they're asking members of Congress to withhold their vote in exchange for either putting pressure on Elon by eliminating contracts that exist within SpaceX. That's a new thing that popped up recently, or um, putting in the letter of law restrictions for billionaires' access to government and whatnot. Here's the other thing: like, this is just pressuring. What we need to do is just to pressure politicians in Congress to just use their power,
Yeah.
because what Elon is doing is already illegal. So we don't need a new law telling us that this cannot be done. This is not a loophole. This is just blatant disregard for existing jurisprudence.
And this law was passed also in 1975 in reaction to Richard Nixon trying to do exactly what Trump and Musk are doing right now.
Yeah.
The Congress and the Republican-led Congress stood up and said, "We are responsible for the spending in the United States of America, not this
Yeah.
president who's acting illegally." And they passed, I believe it was called the Impoundment Act.
Yes. And
So,
and here's the big difference though. Back then you had bipartisan support for impeachment, which is
right.
why he resigned. What a different country we're in.
Well,
you know?
what a time.
What a time. So, but I don't want to despair, make people despair. I want them to fight, right? And that if that means going on to the streets of Washington, I haven't seen the streets of Washington, but I've heard there's a number of protests in certain agencies and whatnot. I mean, that should be. I think you're muted. That should be like all over.
Whoops.
It's all good. I would
Whoops,
mute
I was
myself as
mute.
well.
I was muted. That's awkward.
But it should be millions of people in DC.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's the
the
thing.
the federal workers are starting to go to a lot of protests. It feels like things are starting up. A fascinating stat that I heard earlier today.
Mm.
which is that between January and February, in January, 54% of Democrats, according to a CBS YouGov poll, wanted their congressional representatives to work with the Trump administration. And
Yeah.
46% wanted relentless opposition. 1 month later now, only 35% want Democrats to cooperate, where 65% want all-out opposition. What
That,
they're
yeah.
doing is fundamentally unpopular with the American people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, for sure. For sure. Um, with that being said, you have any other closing thoughts before we move on?
Any closing thoughts? Uh, I think the Trump administration and Elon Musk would like to act like they have powers that they do not have. And as Ezra Klein says, like the moment we really start to believe their falsehoods and their lies is the moment that they win. So ultimately, what they're doing is illegal. It's going to be kicked back in court. And let's not act like the toddler running around, the toddlers in chief have any more
Mm,
power than they actually have.
exactly, exactly. The only fear I have, and this is my closing thought, is
Fear time.
that that um that it goes up to the courts, to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court doesn't go the way of Trump and Elon, and they just ignore the court ruling because that would be a then we would be in major constitutional crisis. We are already in a constitutional crisis, but it hasn't spiraled into a major constitutional crisis. And I think the last time that happened was Nixon. So there you go. Going back to that. But
Full
anyway,
circle.
thank you so much for your time, Scott. We'll keep this going. I'm gonna try and make more frequent videos across throughout the week because this is just fast moving and they're flooding the zone, as Steve Bannon would say. And I want them. I want media to catch up, especially left leaning media. Anyway, thank you so much for your time.
And thank you so much, Luis, and thank you all for watching. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and look forward to seeing you next time.